Making up the boxy jacket sewing pattern 647. Part 4. Next, the sleeve vent. Interface according to the pattern. In addition, add a strip of interfacing along the sleeve hem. I show this later. If you want to add dummy buttonholes, the option is to add them at this stage. It makes machining them easy. It is common though just to have buttons without buttonholes at the cuff. Firstly, stay stitched through these angles. Check out my sew vent video for detailed instructions. And also stay stitched the lining. I'm going to be clipping into these angles. I'm starting with the lining pieces. Right sides up, top sleeve, under sleeve. I will join the sleeve back seam. Stop stitching exactly on this dot and match the notches. The seam is stitched. It is important to clip at the correct places and at the correct angle. Clip the top sleeve lining to these two dots from the angle at the cut edge. Again, check my sew vent video. On the undersleeve, clip in this direction. Again, from the angle on the cut edge. It is important that these clips are at different angles. Press the seam open above the dot. So for the main fabric, again I am joining the top sleeve to the underarm sleeve, stopping at the dot. I have now stitched the seam. This time I will clip the two layers at once as the angle is the same, and also snip along the seam line before pressing open as the seam is on a curve. Pin, baste and stitch and press the seam open. Next I will join the linings to the sleeves at the hem and vent. Just a word about the hem. As I said at the beginning of this series, I'm fitting this jacket onto just 1 metre of fabric for my #UseWhatYouHave and #SustainableFashion mission. So I am making do with a scanty 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimetres hem. Fold and baste a 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimetres turning on the lining. This is the right side of the lining, right side of the main fabric, wrong side to the wrong side. I strongly recommend you watch my sew vent video for this stage if you find it confusing. I will join the vent edge as shown, right sides together. Machine stitch from the dot. Stop stitching about 2 inches or 5 centimetres from the hem. The lining will be sewn in place by hand later. And then I will stitch the other vent edge. Right sides together, again from the dot, stopping short of the hem. Repeat with the other sleeve. That is now done and I can remove all the tailor tacks. The two edges need to be pressed. This is the top sleeve, the vent overlap, top sleeve. I'm going to press this fold. This fold is in line with the back sleeve seam line. On the opposite sleeve, this is the top sleeve and vent overlap. Again, the edge is in line with the seam line. The other edge of the vent is pulled through to become the underlap of the vent, like so. All the seam allowances will be pushed up behind the lining. These two edges line up. The edges are now pressed. This undersleeve edge is pulled through and pressed. You can see more clearly here what happens to the seam allowances. Folding the lining to the side, I am collecting the seam allowances together. Either machine across just above the stitching line or hand stitch them together. Now we have a working vent. Next I will join the lining front sleeve seam and then the main fabric front sleeve seam. Pin, baste and stitch. Clip seams and press open. These seams are now stitched. Pull the lining through and push it up where it belongs. Next I will work on the cuff hem. Although there are many different and clever ways to do this, hand finishing is often easier in the long run and produces better results. I have added interfacing to the lower edge along the hemline. Again, remember my hem will be shorter because of the short length I am using. I'm going to turn up the minimum of 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters. I will be hemming it by hand. Firstly, I will miter the corners for a neat point. Once I have sewn the hem, I will slip stitch the lining to near the top of the hem. This will give me ease in the length of the sleeve lining. We don't want the lining pulling up the sleeve. This sleeve cuff is finished. I have mitered the corners. It has been quite difficult to miter in this case because of the narrow hem. Here is a quick guide to a sewn mitered corner. Imagine this is the button band edge. This is the hem. In this case, these are two different widths. This is the point of the corner. You'll need to take a line at 45 degrees through the actual corner. Not this corner, because these widths are different. So I have a line at 45 degrees through the corner. Fold along this line. Place it under your machine foot so the fold is strictly horizontal. And machine vertically. This will give you an accurate miter. To trim, cut straight across. Turn through, spreading the seam allowance at the same time. I can trim the corner a little bit more. Encourage the point out gently and press. So on the cuff, this is the straight edge, this is the point. Chalk the line. fold along the line, holding firmly. This must be straight across, and I will stitch down from that point at 90 degrees to the fold. Cutting along the fold and spreading out the seam allowance gives some padding to the corner. Trim as necessary. As you turn through, spread the seam allowance. Ease out the corners and give them a press. Next, I'm basting the cuff hem and then hemming with catch stitch or herringbone stitch. Then pin the lining in place, matching seams. Pin near the top of the hem, giving us the ease in the length. Fold in the lining ease at the vent edges. Slip stitch all round and neatly slip stitch the lining at the vent edges. The vents are looking good. Coming next, setting in the sleeves. Making up continues in part 5. Pictures will be published soon. Download all my classic sewing patterns drafted across 9 sizes from angelakane.com. Please subscribe to my channel and thank you so much for watching.